Here we go, Travis.
I'm all bundled up still, cold here in Southwest Georgia, and you're all like laid back with your short sleeve shirt. And I don't like you now.
It was 80 degrees in California today on February 2nd. How's that?
So you have 6 minutes of winter. We have 6 more weeks. Puxatawny gave his declaration. Puxatawny Phil.
Yep.
So, yeah, well, God bless you out there in California as we suffer here in the East.
Well, what about those temperatures in Florida, man?
Gosh.
35 degrees, 32 in Florida.
So
the lizards are falling out of the trees.
Pantheists have a hard time with these things. Winter I don't like.
Yeah.
Got to be bad for the pantheist. That's a terrible illusion that you've created for yourself.
So let's keep talking about this pantheism thing. I've been thinking about it. And here's something I thought of, and we can use this as a launching pad. Okay, so pantheist says that what we would regard as the real world, the natural world, is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
But if you and I are standing together looking at the night sky, and I start pointing out different stars, and you see the same stars, then there must be something outside of our mind that is controlling the illusion. Because if it was just an illusion, you would be seeing something entirely different than what I am seeing. And we probably wouldn't see the same thing from one moment to another. It would just be like a dream. So the fact that the fact that you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, and we're seeing it continuously, like it's the same moment to moment, means there's some controlling intelligence that's running the play, that's running the show, that's keeping the illusion going. Well, that sure sounds like God to me. And if that's the illusion, then okay, well, isn't that the universe that we're living in? It seems like when you really start thinking about pantheism, it seems like you can pick it apart in like 15 different ways. What do you think of that critique?
I think it's very effective. I mean, a pantheist has an answer for it, and so I don't think their answer works. But the answer, you can look at somebody like Parmenides, who divided the levels of deity, and you have like the absolute unity, and then you have like mind is on a lower level, and you and I participate in that same mind. And so the fact that we see the same thing speaks to our unity, that we're actually one, and that the diversity between us is what's the illusion. So when we look at something and we have the same perception of it, that is all a confirmation to them of our unity, not our diversity. So it's not that they don't have an answer to that. But as I told you last week, and I don't remember if I told you this in our conversation afterwards or on the show, I forget some of these things, but guys are sad that you can't really go toe to toe. You can't really go toe to toe on the pantheist metaphysically, because he's going to swallow you up. And so what you have to do is you have to take a step backwards and approach him epistemologically, to show that his worldview is self-defeating and that he's stuck. Now, as we said last week, the argument from being to monism is unsound, because the pantheist doesn't have, maybe we said this, again, I forget.
Yeah.
But just to repeat ourselves, the monist says that being differs either in something or nothing, but it can't differ in nothing, because then there's no difference. And it can differ in something because that's what they have in common. So there's no difference, and therefore all is one. And the argument is unsound because the pantheist doesn't, or the monist doesn't recognize the third option. And the third option is potential. So the correct premise is being differs in nothing, something, or potential.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is at least a logical possibility, even if it's false. And when you're critiquing a deductive argument, you don't even really have to show the probability of your premise. You have to just show that it is on a par with the premise you're critiquing or correcting. And so it is at least possible that things differ in their potential. Different things have differing potentials. Now, as long as that's possible, as I say, the argument is unsound. Now, what you can then do is step back and start asking the pantheist certain questions. And I learned a lot of this from Norman Geisler. He was a master at this. So, for example, you can go to the pantheist and say, so you're a pantheist? Yes. Well, just tell me, when did you become a pantheist? Now, the pantheist is going to say a lot of things, but he's likely to give you his testimony. And you can reiterate that, oh, so you became a pantheist when you were 18 and you realized that Christianity was crazy, stupid, and all of that, blah, blah, blah. Okay. You just disproved your pantheism. Why? Because in saying, I became a pantheist at the age of 18, you just admitted change.
Yes.
I was once something and then I became another. I once had one set of beliefs and then I became another thing with it. I became a person with a different set of beliefs. So that admits a change in consciousness. And that's very hard for the pantheist to deny. You can't deny the change in perception that you had from being a non-pantheist to a pantheist. Now yeah, go ahead.
If I were a pantheist and I was thinking about this, I would have answered that question. I would say, I was always a pantheist. I just didn't realize it.
Very good. And that still brings us back to the question. Okay, you're always a pantheist, but you didn't realize it. When did you come to realize you were a pantheist?
It's still a change, isn't it? Yeah.
It's still a change. Now, at that point, the pantheist could double down and say, yes, but that change was an illusion. Okay, so how do I know that your pantheism is not an illusion? They're both part of your consciousness. So you're conscientiously a pantheist and you conscientiously changed. Now, how do I judge between the two? You've at least shown that his pantheism is very dubitable at this point. And his argument from being the Parmenidean argument that Geisler is critiquing in the book you're reading, that argument is unsound. So he has no platform from which to argue for it. So he's either got to go back and defend the argument, or he's got to explain why his perception of change is less reliable than his belief that pantheism is true.
Mm-hmm.
And while he's doing that, he's changing, because I'm feeding him new information. And he's perceiving a change in his own consciousness.
Well, if part of pantheism is no change, then no person could honestly be a pantheist, because we're all very different from one moment to the next, with our physical bodies, with our consciousness, with what we remember, what's in our mind, the opinions that we hold. That's kind of wackadoodle to
it's one of the most basic intuitions that we have, is that things change. Now, you can then hit the pantheist with another whammy. Am I to believe that pantheism teaches, Mr. Pantheist, that finitude is also an illusion? So you have change, that's an illusion, but also finitude, the fact that things are limited, that's something we perceive all the time as well. I mean, I am constantly facing my own limitations. I don't know everything. Things catch me by surprise. Even as a 55-year-old, I get surprised by things, get surprised by people. I didn't expect that person to do that, but they did.
Yeah.
So my finitude is very much a part of me too. Now he'll say, well, that too is an illusion. Okay, well, what about the proposition pantheism is true? Is that proposition infinite or finite? Well, I think to ask the question is to answer it. It has a beginning and an end. It ends with a period, starts with an I. That is a distinct proposition that is finite. It may be pointing to something that's infinite, but it itself is finite. I came to embrace it. Not everybody knows it. And even those who know it, quote unquote, know it, don't know it in the same language. So it has different manifestations. The proposition, pantheism is true, is finite. It can be uttered in different ways, in different sentences, but it's a single proposition that is finite. Now, you said that all finitude is illusory. That would mean that the proposition pantheism is true is also an illusion.
And the proposition that pantheism is everything is infinite and the same. Why is that the only illusory statement in the universe? It too must be an illusion.
Oh, I mean, every proposition you encounter is an illusion.
Well, then,
see, pantheism is as close as it comes to being what Geiser calls directly self-defeating. You know, a self-defeating proposition is a proposition that literally slits his own throat.
Yeah.
So like if I say to you in English, I can't speak a word in English, that's what you would call an indirectly self-defeating proposition. So atheism is indirectly self-defeating because the atheist says there is no God, or at least entertains the idea that there is no God and says, well, I'm not sure if there's no God or not, but I am without belief in God. And the proposition atheism is true is indirectly self-defeating because it comes from a mind that the atheist says, by his own admission in many cases, can't even be trusted.
Right.
So why should I trust the proposition atheism is true? Well, I'm stuck, but that's an indirectly self-defeating statement. In itself, when you're looking at it, it just doesn't look like it's self-defeating in the same way. I can't speak a word in English when I'm speaking in English is self-defeating, right?
It's like arguing for, if I said to you, Travis, I don't believe in free will. Everything is preordained. I don't even have the ability to think through that proposition if it were true.
Right.
Because every thought in my head would have been predestined, even if it seems to make sense and logically follows one to the other. I can't really know that if what I'm saying is true.
And so that means that atheism has this sort of indirect self-defeating character to it. So it's harder to doubt, and that's why atheists scratch their heads a lot when they hear the argument. They're like, no, you know, they give more pushback. But see, the pantheist, he understands that there are logical binds that trap him. And so he only has one move to make, but it actually intensifies the problem it accentuates the problem rather than solves it. Okay, so you put him in these logical binds. When did you become a pantheist? Oh, okay. When did you realize you were a pantheist? Okay, that's change. The proposition pantheism is true. That's an illusion too, right? So the very thing you believe pantheism is true is by your own on your own stance an illusion. That's self-defeating. Why would you believe what you admit is an illusion? Now, at that point, the pantheist is going to say, but the problem is that you're using the laws of logic to navigate metaphysical truths. The problem is that logic, your puny logic, can't grasp the infinite one. So that's your problem. You need to let go and let the force flow, man. So when Nobion said what he said to Luke, he wasn't merely attacking sense perception. He was attacking the whole epistemological structure of Luke's perspective. He was saying everything about you on one plane, I guess, is okay, but on another plane, you just need to let go of your conscious self and let the force reach out with your feelings, go on instinct. Okay, so the problem with that is you just defeated pantheism,
Right.
because you've made a distinction between the realm where logic works. Navigating how to cross the street, I use the laws of logic. The bus is either coming at me or it's not, that sort of thing. I'm either going in the door, out the door, or not moving at all. I mean, I'm using the laws of logic to navigate my way through this plane of existence. But you're saying that God is beyond that. That means that there's a distinction between the world of logic and the world of God, to which logic doesn't apply. Now, is that distinction real? Oh, then pantheism is false. Or is it illusory? Oh, then that means I can use the laws of logic to get to God. In which case it shows that your pantheism is false because it's illogical. So which is it?
Right. The only thing a pantheist could say for certain is, I can't know anything. Because for them to say,
yeah.
And then
I can't know anything.
And even that then becomes self-defeating, because that's a definite statement. Mm-hmm. So really the only thing they can say for sure is, I don't think I can know anything for certain. That's all you're left with.
And then you would say, is the one, which is pure mind, does the one have that same limitation?
Yeah.
So at this point, it's shooting fish out of a barrel. Every move he makes, he's trapped by these logical binds. And this is precisely why the pantheist doesn't want to play the game.
So I got to plug my computer in and try to pretend like I'm not here. What do you think beneath it, Travis? I mean, it seems like a kind of a crazy position. What is the attraction of pantheism? Because certainly it's not rational. It's not very deep. It doesn't imply meaning or purpose, or it doesn't really give you anything. What's the point in believing that?
I think two reasons pop up fairly easily. The first one is, and I think they both arise out of feeling, but the first feeling consideration is that when I think of reality on this level, I feel a unity between my fellow creature that I just don't get when I think of God in the traditional Christian sense. And then second of all, I feel like I have value when I think of myself as absolutely one with God, that I am God. That gives me an intrinsically infinite value that I would not otherwise have on some other system. I'm certainly not going to get it from atheism, but I'm not going to get it from theism either, because theism makes me feel so puny. And then finally, there is this general sense that religious beliefs ought to be non-rational or even illogical. And unfortunately, the church has primed the Western mind to think this way, because the church for the past 200 years has said that this has nothing to do with reason or rationality. It has everything to do with faith. And faith, by definition, is something you can't prove. And now you're 2 steps away from saying faith, by definition, is irrational. And so we've created a context for people to think of God this way. And that's why people are happy to embrace it. Unfortunately, you have Christians that do the same kind of thing. Like, if an atheist sits with a lot of Christians and gives them a logical bind about God's attributes that they can't get out of, they say, well, that's fine. It's just a matter of faith. So I think that that's part of the problem. When I taught this stuff to high schoolers for 20 years, juniors and seniors heading off to college. And it's interesting. I mean, most of the students that I teach come from a Christian background. And when I go through pantheism, they're smiling. They're happy-go-lucky. Oh yeah, he's he's refuting the pantheists. So I take on the role of the pantheist. I play that role for a few days, and then we do the internal critique, and they're like, "Oh, this is great." Then I go through all the arguments against God's existence from an Abrahamic theist point of view.
Yeah.
And I'm holding their feet to the fire in the same way I do, with the pantheists. And they'll come up to me afterwards, like individually, they'll say, "Well, isn't just this all a matter of faith anyway?" And I look at them and smile and I say, "You weren't singing that tune when we were going after the pantheists."
Yeah.
Kind of convenient, isn't it? That you're not going to make your worldview play by the same rules that you made the pantheist.
Because Travis, obviously, if you go there, if you take that step, if you say it's really just a matter of faith, there's no history or science or logic to back it up, then at that point you literally can believe anything you want. You can believe in Santa Claus, you can believe in Pokemon, you can believe in the Mormon God, you can believe in the Islamic God, you can believe in anything that you want to believe, and nobody can tell you you're wrong. And even pantheism is a very strict system within its own boundaries. And if pantheism were true, even those things that they're saying about pantheism couldn't be true.
That's right.
And so it then becomes a free-for-all. We live in a matrix. You could be part of a death cult. You can go shoot somebody up in the post office. Whatever you want to do, it won't matter because it's just a matter of faith.
Right. That is the problem with modern religion. Modern religion will not allow the laws of logic to adjudicate its truth claims. And all that you're left with at that point is two quoque arguments. So let's say that I'm doing an internal critique of Islam. If I were, we're studying Islam in my religion class right now, and we've gone through the entirety of the second surah. We've looked at Surah 9. We've looked at the statements about Jesus in Surah 19, and we're picking up on contradictions in the Quran. And we've just analyzed all of the arguments for the inspiration of the Quran that I'm aware of. Looked at 10 of them. Now, if I were doing that to a crowd of adults or sophomores in college who didn't know me or anything like that, I guarantee you that they would be unfazed by the critique, even if they weren't Muslims. If they were, say, like liberal, progressive Christian types at the university, they wouldn't be fazed by it. And the reason they wouldn't be fazed by it is because for them, all religion has that kind of problem. So what they would do is they would try to turn it on me. Well, the Bible has its problems too. Now, my question to them is, why would you continue to believe the Bible if you think that about the Bible? Why don't you just say it's all BS and move on? But they don't do that because they just don't think religion is meant to answer those kinds of factual, logical questions. They think that religion is for something totally different. It's the myth we play in for meaning and purpose, which by definition is subjective.
And you know what else, Travis? I think there's another reason. I think that even among people who call themselves Christian in the sense that they take their faith seriously, a lot of times people dance around. The real issue is that everybody this is my intuitive statement about this. I think everybody knows that if you're going to take a religious stand, you need to go all in.
Right.
You need to fully commit. And for the Christian God, for the biblical God, that means a change, a serious change in attitude and action and thoughts, and everybody intuitively knows that, and most people stop one step short because they don't want to love. They don't want to forgive. They don't want to be patient. They don't want the Lord telling us what even to think. Think on those things, Apostle Paul says. And so you get one step outside the circle, and they dance around, and the circle is politics. The circle is end times theology.
Yeah.
Another circle is, you can even be a Bible expert and never take Jesus's claims to a changed life, to a transformed life, seriously. And so I think that's part of this. I think that's most people keep the faith at arm's length because they intuitively know the cost if they took another step.
And I'll even do you one better. I think on an even deeper level, when you hear the unobscured gospel, that making that changed life is not what saves you, but it's God's grace that saves you.
Yes.
And you realize that it's not anything you do, and that you can't even have that changed life but for the grace of God.
That's right.
That you make no contribution whatsoever to your salvation in a very real sense. I think it hurts your pride. I mean, everything that I have, I worked for. And you're telling me I have to lay all my works aside and cling to the cross. That is an offense to our pride.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Inside and outside of the church, there have always been systems that have been created to ground your assurances not in God's love and grace, but ground your assurances into these satisfactions, these propitiations we engage in to appease God that we think is going to appease our conscience.
Right.
And that's why not just outside the church, but inside the church, we often obscure the gospel.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of people are scared to death of taking that last step.
Yeah. And offended at the prospect that the mere taking of that step is going to have Christ come into their life and save them.
Yeah.
That step of faith is all that you need. And they find themselves unable to do it because it's offensive to them. Everything I know, I have to work for. Everything I know in this life, I have to work for my food, for my clothes. And you're telling me that I have to cast all that aside and embrace a man as my savior who died 2,000 years ago.
Because you know what, Travis, one of the things that's really the hardest about Christianity is that we don't get to judge other people. It's really up to the Lord. And if I'm giving up control to God, it means that I'm not in control of judging who's in and who's out. If it's really up to the grace of God, oh my goodness, that's frightening, because God can be gracious towards anybody. God can be gracious towards the people that I really despise. Imagine horror of horror. He's gracious to the people on the political system that is opposite of what I believe. One of the most powerful things I ever heard was by a woman preacher, and she said, "Every time I draw a line between me and somebody else, I find Jesus standing on the other side." And that just, how you're reading the Bible sometimes and it feels like this hand comes up with a bat and just smacks you in the head, because you've read it 1,000 times and finally you read it for the first time. That's how that struck me. That just really stayed with me. Like, it's not our job to judge. We don't know who's in. We don't know who's out. We just got to keep focusing on Christ for ourselves and preaching the gospel and stating the truth as he gives it to us.
Well, you know what? I can't improve on that. So what a good way to end. I hope the audience has enjoyed us doing Christ on Purpose for these 30 minutes. I think that I think it's good for us to not just talk about the atheists, but to talk about really the worldview that really competes with theism. It's not really atheism. Very few people are atheists at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But pantheism is a real thing. And so it is very easy for us to try to blur the distinction between God and us creatures because we want to get in on the act. I think a creature a few years back tempted a couple of people with that very thing. So,
well, it also takes away the whole sin problem. If I am God, then I there's no problem with me sinning.
well, I can't sin against time. So I love you, brother.
Oh man, this is always so much fun. God bless you, Travis.
Bye-bye.
Bye.